I joined the Peace Corps 10 years ago, I remember we got into a big circle right as we were about to leave our training and go out into the rest of the world. And they said, everyone take a turn and go around and describe something you taught yourself to do, something you taught yourself to make or build. And like, I loved my Peace Corps class. They were good people, but they did not grow up in the country the way that I did in the rural areas. So their answers were, I programmed my VCR. I set up my parents' stereo system. I had to like read the schematics, and they were answers like that. And I'd never, until you just said this, started piecing together, like, we have outsourced all of these things. We have created hyper efficient systems, but all of that extra time, most of us didn't use to apply towards something where we can feel progress. And progress to me is human satisfaction. It's moving towards something.
Well, yeah. And like, I mean, so now you have all these people signing up for the Peace Corps to try to find meaning for their lives, right? Because they don't have this meaning that they, you know, could find in exactly what you're talking about. So then we were looking to, you know, these other adventures and like giving back in other ways. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean,
if I didn't think you were so right, I'd be offended by that, but I am not at all. Like I think that one of the reasons that people would go into the Peace Corps, and for the most part, it was people that they could have used those extra years to work and better themselves, but they didn't see that they had much meaning, and that's what they were going for.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's like even a question anymore that our generation and younger is dealing with pretty severe dysphoria with like the world around us, whether it's like anti-establishment, like we don't trust politics, we don't trust the big political parties anymore, we don't trust corporate media, we don't trust anyone in a position of power. So we're sort of like we're recoiling from institutional authority, like
yeah,
that,
and if
that's
you
kind
did,
of gone out the window.
If you did trust somebody, if you or I were sitting here being like, that politician right there, he's somebody I could get behind, everybody around you would be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's like that, you know, that's, people are skeptical of that. And then you know, where like when you look at mental health, for instance, like the rise of depression and suicide, like especially among young people, like that's frightening. And everybody's sort of grappling for trying to figure out why. Is it because, like, I remember watching a podcast once that we literally can get addicted to our cell phones. Like we have dopamine releases when we pick up our cell phone. And so now we have, you know, these like relationships with these things that like give nothing back to us really. And I do think there is something to the like false sense of relationship that we get on social media platforms, which they're like, it's like almost like a drug. It gives you this like little injection of feeling like you're part of a community, so that you don't have that anxiety to go actually seek a real community, and you just keep coming back to it. But the problem is, like, it's not real, you know, so you don't have real relationships. You're not in real community with people. You're in these fake superficial communities. Not that there isn't a place and a purpose for, I mean, like I said, here we are, like there's a lot of good that can come from this kind of technology, but it will never replace like having an afternoon with your neighbor where you're baling hay, or, you know, you're helping like fell a tree for firewood or whatever, and you're actually talking or holding your neighbor's new baby or whatever. Like these don't count as the same things, but unfortunately they've become like part of our idea of like what community means now, to the point where it's starting to replace that. And then it starts to screw up our ideas of like meaning and purpose in all other areas too, I think, anyway, like whether it's your career or whatever else you're talking about. Like it becomes these, you know, a very the sort of imaginative virtual world we keep thinking is going to be enough. And to me, like that's what my decision was, leaving TV and moving into this Airstream, was to say, no, it's not enough. Like, it's not enough. The old way of doing things, like the founding fathers and responsibility for your actions and pioneering something new and building something tangible, like all of those things that made America what it is, like those still matter, whether you have YouTube or not. Maybe YouTube's where you go talk to people about it, but it doesn't replace making the rocking chair itself.
I think I would have pushed back on you a lot harder about these things with community and social media before 2 months of coronavirus. And the reason that I'm like, actually, I think she's got a really good point here, is during the first month, maybe month and a half of coronavirus, I actually spent more time with people than I did in my regular life,
Oh,
because
really?
I cut out all the airport traffic where I was with my headphones in and not talking with anybody, or all this travel time. And instead I replaced it with Google Hangouts and FaceTime and just on all the time. But it wasn't until this morning that one of my buddies came over and we lifted outside, socially distanced, but we lifted at my house. And instantly it became clear that there's something about being in people's physical presence and exerting yourself, that you're like, oh, wait a second, this is what we had before, we just forgot all about it. And if you've grown up in the world where social media is a substitute, it's saccharine compared to sugar, right? It's always going to taste a
Right.
little off.